Under the bright, burning sun in the middle of the desert, the two teams were staring at each other with a sand hill in between. The players were soaked in sweat as they stood on the burning sand and entered the status. Even though they were not moving, their energy points were still decreasing at a steady rate. The location in the desert is too open, which is bad for us. We are probably going to lose here. Lone Crane was discouraged. This was Frenzied Sword's Rivervale Club team. They were lucky as they had not met any strong teams. They had struggled their way through the competition, and now they are on the last batch of the qualifiers. If they won this game, they could get into the next stage. But it seemed that Rivervale's luck had run out. The randomized map was an open desert, which was bad for a composition focused on close combat. Lone Crane was annoyed, and because of that, the whole team's morale was down. Frenzied Sword stepped up to change the atmosphere and frowned. Don't worry, the fight hasn't started yet. We still have the chance to win. Lone Crane shook his head. The enemy has a strong ranged attack abilities, so the only way for us is to close the distance. Of course, we will only get kited if we charge in recklessly, so the best way is to lure them into an ambush. They can hide in the sand, and you all act like you are running away and lure them to where I'm hiding. Then I can pressure their backline while you all turn around and attack. This is the only way. The teammates all looked at each other, and this time Lone Crane replied, since this is your idea, if we lose, you will be responsible for this. Lone Crane was obviously trying to avoid the blame so that he would be off the hook if he lost the game. Seems that they can't wait any longer. Isaac from the opposing team laughed. The enemy is just a small club. I saw their matches before, and they excel in close combat, but they have no synergy. Plus, we have the map advantage, so as long as we keep our distance, victory is ours. Lone Crane and the other four ran with tails between their legs. Isaac's team quickly chased after them, but soon, they realized that there were only 4 people in Rivervale team. Where did the other 2 go? Isaac raised his suspicion and raised his hand. Halt, I think they are luring us into a trap. Lone Crane kept on running forward while being demotivated. He could not understand Frenzied Sword's strategy. Then he suddenly had an idea to push all the blame on Frenzied Sword. If he directly fought the enemy head-on without telling Frenzied Sword, at least it would seem like Lone Crane tried his best, while Frenzied Sword was hiding the entire fight. This would definitely make the higher officials be disappointed in Frenzied Sword. However, he could not purposely steer away from where Frenzied Sword was hiding since the rest of the teammates also knew the location. Therefore, the only thing that Lone Crane could do was make them look like they were luring the enemy into a trap. Thus, Lone Crane kept on running, regardless of whether the enemy followed or not. Look at them go. They don't look like they are trying to lure us, and there's a lower chance that there will be an ambush in the open field. Let's chase after them. Unfortunately, Isaac was wrong. After chasing Rivervale for a while, they reached the ambush area, and a spot within the team exploded, covering them in sand. Frenzied Sword and his teammate rushed out and charged into the backline. It was so sudden that Isaac and his teammates' jaws dropped. Frenzied Sword used all his strength and tore open the enemy's formation. Lone Crane, who was far away, also frowned, and he had no choice but to lead his team back into the battle. The scene was in chaos. Despite the ambush, Isaac and his teammates did not back down easily, and Rivervale still had to fight an intense battle. Luckily, Frenzied Sword had a great performance and eliminated the squishy Aspers, getting a double kill. After Isaac fell to the ground, the surroundings finally quieted down, and one could only hear wind blowing through the sand. Rivervale's victory. We won. Frenzied Sword waved his fist. We actually got into the next stage. Lone Crane could not close his mouth as he was shocked. Was the enemy so stupid that they could not tell his obvious act? In the night sky, far away from planet Aquamarine, a few wormholes were opening and closing while leaking rays of rainbow, and lighting up the dark universe into a colorful playground. Around the center of the shattered wormhole was a large space station floating in space, and the shape was like 3 buildings stacked on each other horizontally. The space station took in thousands of spaceships every second, as if it was a beehive. A small spaceship covered in yellow and white flew into a space deck. The spaceship shook as it entered the gravitational area, and it headed into the garage after a few minutes. Identity authorized. Permit granted to dock. Welcome, Captain Kurlod, Space Investigator 741 of Godora. Whoosh. The door to the aircraft opened, and a man walked down as a platform extended onto the ground. He was a male Godoran with light golden skin. He had similar facial features to a human, but there was more space between the parts of the face. The body structure was also identical to that of human: 1 brain, 2 hands, 2 lands, and a schlong. There was nothing extra such as a tail or an additional limb. He was 2 meters tall, which was the average height of Godoran. Kurlod, who worked for the Godoran Space Investigation Department, was the captain of an investigation team. Even though his title was captain, he did not have any men under his command. He only had a Godora standardized suitcase, equipment, and the Observer, which was a small-sized spaceship. The spaceship was 30 meters long, and it could only hold one passenger. Oh wow, a pure-blood Godoran. It's rare to see such an elite species. As the gate of the garage opened, a man wearing the work suit for the space station laughed. Huh, an inferior breed. Kurlod glanced at the worker and looked down at him. Godorans had extreme pride in remaining pure-blooded and denounces mixed breeds. It was part of their culture that they should discriminate against those who are not pure-blooded Godorans. The man did not bother and said, "Just register. How long will you park here, and where will you be heading to?" "Stopping for 2 days to refuel, then we'll head to Star Zone 9 to investigate an unusual phenomenon in an undeveloped civilization," Kurlod replied. "Star Zone 9. Isn't that a very dangerous place? Seems that you got the difficult work from your boss." But since it was an uncivilized place, the reason that they thought that it was an unexplained phenomenon was because of their lack of technology. "I can just take a look and come back in no time." Kurlod raised his chin, walked out of the garage, and headed to the resting station in the middle of the space station. After the two left, the gate of garage closed. After some time, a black gluey object crawled out from the platform of the space dock. It looked like it was a life form, and this unknown object was only a meter squared large. The gluey liquid slowly crawled up to the Observer and disappeared into the cracks of the spaceship. In the icy mountain range of planet Aquamarine's northern continent, a black helicopter with the Darknet logo rested on one of the mountains. Hanzio crossed his arms in front of him and viewed the clouds drifting in the mountain range. The cold air kept on slipping into his sleeves, but Hanzio did not feel slightly cold. On the other hand, the pilot who wore 3 layers of clothes was freezing to death. "Your Excellency, how long do we have to wait?" "1 day at minimum, but it might take up to half a month." Wang Jian's face froze. The difference was too much. They chattered to alleviate the boredom. However, most of the time, Hanzio was watching the matches on the forum. The International All-Stars had started. All the top teams from each region competed fiercely, and the players brought endless entertainment onto the stage. "Sir, the satellites have discovered an unidentified object that's rapidly approaching the atmosphere." The observatory of Raylan in the northern continent was suddenly in alert. The satellite showed a light dot approaching planet Aquamarine from outer space. "Is this a meteor?" "Target appeared on our scanners 3 minutes ago before." If it was a meteor, our scanners should have noticed it much earlier. Moreover, meteors should be more affected by our planet's gravitational pull. Don't tell me it's an alien spaceship. The target has increased in velocity. Estimated landfall in 8 minutes. Coordinates. Is it an unpopulated area? Target is estimated to land in a barren mountain range in the northern continent. The specific location is right by our country's border. The professor in charge of the observatory immediately gave out the order. "Report this to the higher-ups now. Request for troops to head to the landing site." Wang Jian was bored out of his mind. He had already been waiting in this darned wasteland for 10 days with Hanzio, waiting for God knew what. But due to how legendary his boss was, the felt that Hanzio was definitely there for a purpose, and he was curious as to what it could be. Hanzio was standing in the snow when he suddenly looked up in the sky. He then immediately turned around and headed for the helicopter and took out his equipment. "Something's finally happening." Wang Jian was elated and asked, "What are you doing?" "It's here," Hanzio answered without even looking up and quickly put on his gear. "What's here?" Wang Jian did not get it. Just as he finished asking the question, an ear-piercing sound came down from the sky, causing Wang Jian to look up. A fireball flew down from the sky, and one could more or less make out the shape of an aircraft amid the flames. Boom! The aircraft crashed into the peak of a nearby mountain, blasting black rocks and snow everywhere. It then continued flying down and cleaved a path clean through the snowy valley, burning all the surrounding trees as it passed and causing a mini earthquake. The high mountain peak collapsed and caused a small avalanche. Wang Jian's mouth was hanging wide open, and all the color had drained out of his face. Spaceship. Wang Jian could not believe what he was seeing and looked toward Hanzio. He had heard all sorts of things about Hanzio, but it turned out that this man was even more mysterious than in the rumors. He could even know when a spaceship was going to crash land. Quickly, Hanzio had put on Amphipter, stretched out the joints, and took out the flight device bat wings before attaching it onto the empty slot on his back. His helmet's interface showed that the flight system was functioning normally. "Fly," Hanzio commanded in his mind as he sprinted toward the cliff's edge, and the wings started to make out buzzing noises. The turbines span at maximum capacity, and the tail end spat out blue flames. The observer ship had gotten itself stuck, and half of its body was in the ground. The surrounding trees and grass were still on fire, but the ship itself seemed to still be in perfect condition. Its energy shield had protected the ship from breaking apart during the crash. However, the massive impact did damage the generator, and now, the shield was greatly weakened while the engines were simply done for. Coordinates stored. Location: Planet Aquamarine, 9th star system. Gravity level: low. Current temperature: 3 degrees Celsius. Climate type: air. Moisture level: civilization level: planetary. Danger level: low. Summary: survivable. Kurlod was still a bit shaken up and said, "Check body condition." Analyzing. Analysis complete. 3 bone fractures, moderate nerve damage, and minor damage to the brain. Inject nanohealant. Inject. Oh, there's a survivor. Hanzio noticed the Godoran to the side. Hanzio raised his eyebrows before his gaze focused on the intergalactic communicator on the Godoran's hand. This was what he was looking for. Planet Aquamarine's local. Kurlod sized him up in a glance and switched on the translator mode, allowing his own language to be translated into what Hanzio could understand. He pointed his fingers at Hanzio and said, "You, tell me, what is this place?" In the clairvoyant view of Destiny's Child, it could never show the details on whether a person lived or died. Hanzio had originally decided to first get to the crash site of the spaceship and steal the intergalactic communication device. This device was the most important factor to leave the planet. The spaceship was never the target. As it turned out, the device was still in the investigator's possession, so the original plan would not work. He had to think of a new way to deal with the investigator. Hanzio thought quickly, "Do I rob or swindle him?" Seeing that Hanzio still had not replied after some time, Kurlod frowned and said, "Hey, I ask you a question. Answer me. Are you the visitor from Godara?" Hanzio made up his mind and slowly moved toward Kurlod. "The civilization from this planet requested help. I am the investigator responsible for the assistance." "Who are you?" When Hanzio was within 10 meters of Kurlod, he replied, "I am the messenger of Planet Aquamarine. I am here to invite you to our place." "Good. Take me to the most powerful leader in this civilization." Kurlod was surprised and dropped his suspicion. He suddenly remembered something and said, "Wait for a second. I need to report back to the people who sent me here." "No problem. Waiting is the least I can do." Kurlod was satisfied with the treatment from Planet Aquamarine, and he was even more pleased with the attitude of this messenger. Just as he lowered his head and turned on the communication device, Hanzio suddenly charged forward. The Batwing flying device suddenly activated, and Hanzio shot forward as if he was a cobra. Hanzio kicked right on Kurlod's body and snatched the device from his hand. On the receiving end of the attack, Kurlod slowly got up without any injury. Kurlod's expression was cold, and he took the 2 small golden balls that were attached to his braids. The mechanical force flashed on his fingertips, and the small ball expanded. One ball became a golden shield, while the other ball turned into golden spear. The appearance was old-fashioned, but one could feel the energy embedded in the weapon, showing that they were not ordinary weapons. "You uncultured swine, you've made a big mistake." The transformation from the golden ball to a weapon was a mechanic skill. Advanced civilizations basically had this skill in hand, and it was clear that Godara had better equipment. The battle erupted. Hanzio spread out his wings, and the 4 machine guns on the wings fired rapidly. Kurlod raised his shield, and the shield released a larger circular light shield on top of it. All the bullets were reflected by the light shield. Kurlod roared with anger and pointed his spear right at Hanzio. The head of a spear suddenly fired a golden bullet in an arrow shape. Hanzio jumped in an instant, and the bullet passed right by his feet. The bullet left clear holes in the trees that were on its path and disappeared into the distance. Godoran craftsmanship combined technology and magic, so it was not an ordinary weapon that was based on technology. Instead, its power was stronger than normal explosive powder, where one light bullet could take out 500 armor points. The damage was extremely high. Kurlod was supposed to be an enemy from version 2.0, so it was natural that one felt his damage was too high. Even though investigators were not famous for their combat skills, Kurlod was different. He had great confidence in his combat abilities, and he thought that he could suppress anyone from the lower civilization with just his equipment alone. Kurlod had the sense of pride as a part of a higher civilization. "This is probably the first time I've fought with a space soldier. His ranged attack is stronger than mine. I need to try and get close. Hanzio instantly adapted his plan and dove down onto the enemy. 4 sonic spheres flew and exploded around Kurlod. Kurlod's shield was affected by the attack, meaning that the attack was stable. Punches and kicks with huge bursts of energy landed on Kurlod's body. The shield was heavily weakened. Even though close-quarter combat was advantageous for a mechanical pugilist, Hanzio had a variety of skills and abilities that overwhelmed Kurlod. The two men did not rest for a second, and the battlefield was soon moved away from the spaceship crash site and into a forest. Even though the Godoran investigator had the advantage in equipment, Hanzio's attacks were too complex and unpredictable. Kurlod could not hold back the attacks as he got more and more frustrated. He had decided to end this battle. The axe exploded in light like burning sun, and Kurlod whirled it in the air and chopped down. Hong! The earth cracked, and the impact wave exploded onto the side. One more! Kurlod roared. He took a step back, used another skill as his body shined, and attacked again. The signal of danger was imminent and deadly. The air pressure was landing at extremely high speed. Nice. Hanzio was happy instead of being afraid. He quickly activated the skill that he had saved up. Hanzio's energy power boosted at an insane rate. The thick and strong mechanical force covered the mechanical suit, as if it was a lightning snake crawling on his body. The energy core of the mechanical suit was so bright that it hurt Kurlod's eyes. At the same time, a shadow of a man wearing a black mask appeared behind Hanzio. Mechanical skill, energy core overloads, attributes buff increases. All modules have no cost. Duration of status, 7 minutes. Cooldown, 7 days. Character summon card, Germinal Organization Leader. For the next 8 seconds, all skills deal critical true damage, ignoring all armor. The target's defense status will also decrease by 24%, lasting 5 minutes. Usage, 1/12. And also, Flaming Will, Overload, Surging Mechanical Force, Bang 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 Bang. The tsunami of attacks washed over the frightened face of Kurlod. The sound of the explosions came continuously from where the spaceship had crashed. Huang Jian rubbed his hands and exhaled, worried. Sounds like a battle, but who is he fighting? Huang Jian was confused. In this unpopulated wilderness, was Hanzio fighting with an alien? Even the thought of it made him think that it was such a crazy world. After a while, the sound disappeared, and Huang Jian worried even more. Although he had heard of how strong Hanzio was, the enemy was an alien after all. If anything happens to him, there won't be anyone giving me orders. Should I continue to wait or? Just as he was in a dilemma, an outline of a person flew in his direction from the place where the spaceship crashed and approached very quickly. Great, you're okay. Huang Jian heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he saw that Hanzio had brought along a being of a species that he had never seen before. And its feet and hands were locked by electrical handcuffs. That was Kurlod. An alien. Took me quite some effort to capture him. Hanzio grabbed Kurlod by his hair and stuffed him into the cabin. This Godoran's face was filled with rage, but his mouth was blocked, so he could not say anything. Huang Jian was stunned. He knew that Hanzio was strong, but he did not know that Hanzio was so strong that he could even capture an alien. Huang Jian started flying the helicopter hastily, and they departed. Huang Jian was very curious about the alien, and he kept turning back. Your Excellency, does he bite? He, a high civilization investigator, was being looked down on by a native as a savage beast. Kurlod was furious, but his limbs were all tied, so he could only express his protests by knocking his head on the metal plate strongly. I don't think he bites. Hanzio touched his chin and said with a low voice, but seeing that he's so furious, maybe he has such twisted interests. Bang, bang. Kurlod continued knocking his head on the metal plate. Is he edible? Huang Jian asked curiously. Hanzio pinched the Godoran's arms and said, the skin is quite smooth, and the meat is rather solid. Are you interested? Huang Jian hesitated, then nodded and said, I have never eaten an alien before. Boom boom boom. The frequency of head knocking on the metal plate became higher. Underdeveloped. Savages. Kurlod growled in his heart, then a tint of fear appeared in his mind. Do these natives really want to eat me? Is it a male or female? Huang Jian was curious. Check it yourself, Hanzio said with a weird expression. Huang Jian opened his eyes wide and looked for a while, then said in surprise, I thought that since this alien's build is so huge, it should be huge too. Boom. Kurlod could not take the humiliation anymore and used all his strength to bang his head against the metal plate, knocking himself unconscious. More than 10 minutes after the helicopter left, Raylan's troops arrived late at the scene, found the crashed spaceship, and immediately locked the area down in shock. This is a spaceship from outer space. According to the orders from above, this is a spaceship from the friendly Godoran civilization that was specifically sent to help us investigate the Inhumans. Even the mountain peak was destroyed. This was not a usual landing. And the spaceship wrecked. Check for survivors immediately. Report, no corpses were discovered in the spaceship. There are traces of a battle here. Raylan's troops collected clues, observed the battlefield, and reached their first conclusion. Two people fought each other, both superhumans. One of them used weapons unknown to us. The marks on these trees seem like they were melted through by laser beams. The slash marks are extremely smooth. They were not caused by ordinary cold weapons. These battle traces have comparatively higher radiation levels, so this should be the Godoran. The other party used firearms. The metal construction of the bullet shells is similar to ours. There are also some armor shards in the ground, so this should be someone very strong in our planet. The actual person needs to be further verified with the database. From the destruction level of the scene, this person's strength is definitely at the top of planet Aquamarine, and there are very limited people in this category. The person should be identified within a short period. The result of the battle was most likely that the Godoran was captured and taken away. Are there any other discoveries? At this time, a researcher noticed that the spaceship's armor was open, and inside were the internal parts of the spaceship. He looked inside curiously, and as he was using the torchlight, he suddenly found something special. The researcher said there seemed to be liquid in the spaceship. Liquid? The crowd surrounded the area, with a strong light shining in. They found a pile of metal and pipes covered in black, sticky liquid. What is that? Probably fuel. At this time, the officer suddenly said, "Orders from above, transport the spaceship back to the nation secretly." The accident that happened to the Godara spaceship was a once-in-a-blue-moon chance for the planet Aquamarine regimes, so Raylan decided to research on the technology of the spaceship. Being back at the sanctuary, Hanzio locked Kurlod in his secret base, then checked his battle trophies. Godara Battle Spear. Type: highly compressed cold weapon plus light element enhanced. Quality: green. Basic stats: melee damage 247, 255, range damage 294, 381. After putting away the equipment, Hanzio took out the galactic communicator. His face turned serious in the face of the key item. At this time, Kurlod, who had been tossed and left in the corner, secretly opened his eyes. Seeing that Hanzio was looking at the galactic communicator, his lips warped into a sneer. Although he had become a prisoner, Kurlod still held on to his sense of superiority. He was sure that this planet Aquamarine native would not be able to use the communicator. In his eyes, Hanzio was like a monkey getting its new toy. A thought appeared in his mind, and Kurlod suddenly felt energetic. He doesn't know how to use any of this equipment, which means he will definitely ask me about to use them. Maybe I can trick him into sending a rescue signal to the headquarters without him knowing. Kurlod felt this plan could work, and he became excited as he saw hope. At this time, Hanzio easily brought up the translucent crystal screen of the communicator, looked at the screen full of Godara words, chose the option to switch language instantly, and changed it into planet Aquamarine's language. Kurlod, right. Good that you're awake. Now, tell me your personal account. How can you possibly know how to use the communicator? And about personal accounts, who are you? Kurlod's eyes were filled with disbelief. He could almost not make sense of his words and was terrified. How could a native know about these things? There was only one explanation for this. This guy is definitely not a native. He came from the galaxy as well. Thinking of this, Kurlod's sense of superiority was nowhere to be found anymore. He was stunned and confused. Originally, he had planned to threaten the man with the name of Godara, but it would only be useful against a native. Who am I? Hanzio raised the corner of his lips and said deliberately mysteriously, "Our meeting was rushed. Please, allow me to officially introduce myself. My name is Hanzio. There's nothing else you need to know." Kurlod was more convinced of his guess and felt that Hanzio was very mysterious. He looked Hanzio in his eyes and saw an abyss filled with mist. Suddenly, it occurred to him, and he yelled, "Wait a minute, how did you know my name?" "You are a Godoran investigator, ordered to investigate the so-called Inhumans in planet Aquamarine," Hanzio said slowly. "Due to unknown reasons, your spaceship met an accident. Are you a mind reader or foreseer?" Kurlod said with a cautious expression. He discreetly used his energy to protect his mind. However, he did not discover any traces of it being invaded. "Guess," Hanzio said mockingly. This attitude made Kurlod grind his teeth, but he had no choice under such circumstances. He held his anger and asked, "Why did you attack me?" Hanzio pointed at the communicator and said, "Don't worry, this is not personal. I also am not hostile toward Godara. All I want is this. You call this not hostile? If I was hostile, you would already be dead. I just need the communicator to contact Galactic Travel Agency and leave this planet. I need to borrow the money in your personal account. If you are willing to cooperate, I can let you go and bring you to leave with me. At that time, you can return home if you like. Kurlod was surprised. You're willing to let me go? Why not? Hanzio laughed. I have no grudge with or hatred toward Godera. I'm just robbing you of your money, not your life. After pondering, he said with dignity, as long as you fulfill your part of the deal, I am willing to cooperate. I can promise in the name of God Gal that I will never seek revenge. I admit my defeat. God Gal was the religious god of Godera, so this kind of promise was very solemn. Kurlod's personal account had galactic general currency. Calling the Galactic Travel Agency needed money, and since Hanzio was unsure if they would accept resources as payment, getting the general currency was insurance. Only this much money. You're too poor. Hanzio could not help but complain. Ina's was the general currency in the galaxy, the most common currency unit used. Kurlod's face turned red, and he said, I don't have the habit of saving. Being an investigator is a tough job, and I need to enjoy myself. Wait a minute, why am I explaining myself to you? He suddenly realized that he was being robbed. Why did he even have to feel ashamed of having little money? Having received the money, Hanzio's target was achieved, and he felt assured. Counting the days, the planet Aquamarine divisions would last for about more than 10 days, and he planned to use that time to contact the Galactic Travel Agency in advance. Location: Star Zone 9, Planet Aquamarine. Destination: Hanzio paused and said, Jubilee Hub. Please select price range. Cheapest. Hanzio gave Kurlod the cheapskate a stare. Number of travelers: a few dozen. Race: human. Now, I just have to wait for the players to finish the competition. I will then make an announcement, and the team will be created. It's all ready. There were some matters in Planet Aquamarine that he had to deal with before leaving. As Hanzio was doing his preparation discreetly, Bennett suddenly called him. I have arrived at Sanctuary 3. Where are you? Why are you suddenly here? Hanzio said jokingly. Missed me? What do you think? Bennett said with a very serious tone. Where did you hide that alien? You didn't eat him, did you? Bennett's pupils constricted. This was the first time that he had seen an alien, so he could not help but stare, forgetting himself. He looked at the two of them and said in confusion, Didn't you capture him? Why does it look like we have agreed on some matters? Hanzio did not want Kurlod to hear their following conversation, so he took off his translator. How did you know about the alien? Hanzio asked. Bennett shook his head and said in a low voice, Raylan told me, or else I wouldn't have known an alien came. They investigated you, confirmed that you captured the alien, and contacted me discreetly to demand that you to give them the alien. And what if I reject? Raylan is very firm this time. Can you tell me, how did you kidnap an alien back after a casual walk outside? What do you want to do? Hanzio sat down, looked at Bennett, and said, I'm planning to leave Planet Aquamarine. Bennett was completely stunned. This message was way too sudden. Bennett only regained his focus after a while, and asked with surprise, why? Are you really an alien? Compared to the galaxy, Planet Aquamarine is just a tiny rural place. The world is so large, and I want to explore it. Hanzio smiled. Turns out this was the reason for the capture of the alien. Bennett adjusted his mindset very quickly. He had seen a lot of things. After all, he said with some sadness, you are a friend who shares the same ideals as me. If you've really decided that, I can only wish you all the best. I will miss you. Hanzio looked him in the eye and smiled. That's a wider world, aren't you tempted? Do you want to come with me? Bennett's mind drifted away a little. It was like he saw the endless galaxy in Hanzio's eyes. Men's romance was the sea of stars, and one could only look further by standing taller. His heart started beating faster. The desire for exploration in his heart became stronger. However, Bennett calmed down very quickly. He shook his head and said, The sanctuary is my ideal. Sorry, I need to continue it. Hanzio hesitated and said, There's actually another reason. A disaster will sweep over Planet Aquamarine in 2 to 3 years' time. I foresaw it. It's a horrifying disaster, and there's a very low chance of surviving. Are you really not leaving? Hanzio decided to warn Bennett about the arrival of the mutation disaster. After all, Bennett had treated him well. It was dangerous staying in Planet Aquamarine, and Hanzio wanted to enter the galaxy before version 1.0. One of the main goals that he had was to avoid the first and most dangerous wave of disaster when the mutation disaster arrived in Planet Aquamarine. With the possible identity of a foreseer, Hanzio's foresight had reasons to be believed. However, after Bennett listened carefully to Han Zio's rough description of the disaster, his hesitation disappeared completely, and he said, "Then I categorically have to stay. This is my home, and she needs me." Han Zio stared at Bennett for a while before letting out a long sigh. "Indeed, that's the type of person you are." People's beliefs differed and could not be forced. Bennett stared at Han Zio with complicated emotions in his eyes and asked, "Are you leaving to avoid the danger?" Han Zio smiled and said, "The solution to the disaster is hidden in the galaxy. Not only am I avoiding danger, but I am also looking for the solution in the galaxy." He did not lie to Bennett. Solving the mutation disaster in version 2.0 in advance was part of his plan. Hearing this, Bennett smiled and said, "I was not wrong about you. When I heard your speech back then, I knew we are the same type of people." "We are not." Han Zio's lips twitched. That speech had been completely copied from Bennett's original words in his previous life. Suddenly, Bennett said with a serious tone, "There are too many Inhumans in Sanctuary 3. Even more than the refugees, they're taking up too much space. They have unknown origins and are too mysterious. This is a potential security threat. I don't know how you make them work for you, but if you leave, what are we going to do with them? When the disaster is upon us, the Inhumans will most likely be the pillar of Sanctuary's protection. Don't be too strict toward them, accept and include them." As the players grew, the various organizations in Planet Aquamarine feared Inhumans more and more, and naturally, Bennett was not an exception. Although he feared the Inhumans, he changed his attitude immediately upon knowing that the Inhumans could protect the Sanctuary. This reasoning was very effective on him. The two of them chatted for a while, then Bennett stood up and said his goodbyes. He had come to deal with Raylan's message but unexpectedly heard about Han Zio plans. In this case, Raylan's warning would not be worrying at all. On the other hand, the disaster that Han Zio had told him about gave him a heavy heart. It felt like there was a dark cloud above the path in front of him. He decided to immediately return and write the crisis protocols, strengthen the Sanctuary's protection, and speed up the plan. Then it was sad to see a partner like Han Zio go, so he said sincerely, "I wish you all the best, and I hope that we can meet again one day." Han Zio reached out to give Bennett a firm handshake. They smiled at each other. On that same night, he summoned Gila and Aurora to tell them that he was going into the galaxy soon. As expected, they were surprised, and their faces were filled with disbelief. "Han Zio, what is the galaxy like? Have you met an alien?" Aurora asked hurriedly. Han Zio asked Kurlod to come closer and said, "This is an alien." Aurora's eyes were filled with curiosity. "Aliens look quite similar to us. Does he bite?" This question again. "Can't you natives be more knowledgeable?" Kurlod could not take it anymore and yelled at Aurora, "I don't." Kurlod fell onto the ground with his face down. Han Zio put his hands down and said hastily, "Be kinder to kids. Aliens are so scary," Aurora mumbled softly. Gila pointed at Han Zio with an expressionless face and said, "He's obviously scarier." Han Zio gave Gila a look, signaling that they needed to talk privately, then walked to the side. Not long after, Gila walked over, stood beside him, and frowned. "What? Do you want to leave this planet with me? Why are you inviting me?" Gila's expression in her eyes changed a little, and she looked at Han Zio's profile. "Not just you, your sister as well. I know that you two will never separate." Gila looked down to consider, and after a long silence, she said slowly, "No." Han Zio raised his brows. "I asked Bennett the same thing. It's understandable that he's not coming, but why did you reject?" "Dangerous," Gila said. "I need to take care of my sister. It's dangerous to stay too." Han Zio looked at her meaningfully, lit a cigarette, and exhaled some smoke. "Okay then." His tone was very casual and did not show any signs of wanting to know more, which made Gila doubtful. As he was speaking, he took out a string of keys, threw them to Gila, and said coldly, "If the darkness devours the sanctuary one day, these keys lead to my secret base. It can provide a place to hide for you. I've left the location information in my office, the laminated backside of the third drawer on the left. I'm leaving it there for you." Gila played with the keys. Suddenly, she said, "Are you not coming back?" Han Zio put on a half smile and said, "Do you care about that a lot?" Gila snorted coldly, raised the keys, signaling that she would remember what he had said, and left. After she walked a few steps away, Han Zio's voice came from behind with a light tone. "Don't die." Gila's footsteps paused. "You too." After Gila left, Han Zio's smile disappeared. He threw the cigarette butt on the floor and extinguished it with his foot. From what he estimated, there was more than a 50% chance that Gila will leave with him, but Gila had made the other choice unexpectedly. Even so, after being rejected twice on the bounce, Han Zio was still rather hurt in his heart. He mumbled to himself, "Could it be that I'm not charming?" It can't be. Suddenly, the sound of cheering crashed over the chatting duel like a tsunami. Han Zhao went onto the forums to check out the commotion as there was currently a live broadcast of the tournament. All the fights had come to an end, and a champion had been born. For the team matches, Dynasty had clinched the top spot after a hard-fought battle against Long Sky, while Temple of God had closely followed behind as the third team. Although the three big guilds have lived up to their names and taken all three top spots, the other teams who managed to reach the top 8 had all shown breathtaking performances. For individual matches, King Admiral had secured a victory in the finals and netted Dynasty 2 championships, causing their fame to skyrocket. Frenzied Sword had defeated his opponent and secured his spot as third in the individual rankings. Due to his relatively new gaming career, he was dubbed the dark horse of the tournament. The top 3 teams as well as the top 3 players from the individual matches on Planet Aquamarine had all qualified for the internationals. All 3 teams were from Chinese guilds, and countless players looked forward to seeing them compete on the global stage. They're finally done with the matches. Those pro players are finally free. Han Zhao's eyes gave off a weird glint as he prepared his next stage of action. At the Sanctuary's square, the roads were bustling with players who were living in the excitement of the tournament. They each discussed their own favorites, and the pro players would occasionally show up themselves, exciting the crowd even more. Of course, there were also the group of bros who believed in their luck, waiting day in and day out at Han Zhao's usual stall for the next batch of loot crates. He's coming. The group of people stretched out their necks as they waited. The truck drove by slowly before it came to a stop. Han Zhao walked off the truck, but it did not seem like he was going to sell loot crates as usual. Instead, he took a look around and said in a loud voice, "I have a perilous mission ahead, and I'm in need of helpers. I will be selecting qualified people to join my team. If you're confident in passing my test, come." Immediately after, Han Zhao sent out the mission that he had previously written up. Team member selection. Mission introduction. Han Zhao will soon leave Planet Aquamarine in secret to begin a new adventure. He is looking for powerful people to fight alongside him. Those who pass his test can venture off into the stars with him. Mission requirement, LV60. Mission period, 5 days. Completion requirement, pass Han Zhao's combat test. Reward, 1 EXP in the qualification to go with Han Zhao on his journey. This instantly caused massive waves among the players. Everyone had widened eyes as they read through the mission information. This is so sudden. Can we now leave the beginner planet? I can't believe we need to have max level before we can take the test. Hold for 30 seconds, and you pass. About 1,000 people had accepted the mission, and they all discussed among themselves as they watched. 30 seconds can't be that difficult, right? Said the second prince. Even if I went one-on-one against a level 60 boss in the wild, I could at least survive for a few minutes. Li Ji looked at the time and shook his head. The first player who was selected for the test had the ID Falling Leaf, and he took a big step out of the crowd. The surrounding players immediately backed up to clear a space. Although fighting in players' main city would usually worsen their reputations with the city's NPCs, it should be fine with Han Zhao there. Countless pairs of eyes stared unblinkingly, as if waiting for something. Start. Han Zhao said a single word. Falling Leaf immediately got into a defensive stance while waiting for the incoming blow. 4 sonic spheres flew out while crisscrossing in the air. Attached to the spheres were detection devices that both increased the weapon's range and accuracy. An ear-piercing explosion suddenly bloomed on the stage. Falling Leaf's health dropped instantly, and he was rooted where he was by a stunned effect. Boom, boom, boom. 6 pre-planted turrets suddenly sprang out of the ground and simultaneously opened fire on Falling Leaf. The combined firing rate was so fast that it was as if a miniature hailstorm was occurring where Falling Leaf was standing. Within a few moments, Falling Leaf collapsed onto the ground after being blasted to bits by the turret. Although Falling Leaf had activated multiple energy skills to surround himself with a thin layer of energy, he was pinned to the ground as bullets rained down on him. The surrounding players all had their mouths hanging wide open as they could not believe what had just happened. A max-level pro player could not even resist for 5 seconds before almost being wiped out. There was no need to even talk about skills or controls. Han Zhao might as well have just hung him up and whipped his backside. The player had been completely suppressed. What surprised the players even more was that Han Zhao had remained in the same position throughout the whole thing. Even his pose was the same. Are mechanics supposed to be this overpowered? Do we really have the same class? He didn't even move. The battles continued. The following players were much more careful, and they all tried their best to kite around Han Zhao. None dared go head-on. The moment a player was hit by Han Zio's attacks, they would go down within 10 seconds. Everyone tried everything that they could to survive for 30 seconds. The surrounding audience grew in size, and some started to post recordings of the fights onto the forums. The people who watched the recordings were flabbergasted. It had only been a few days ago that these pro players had been showing off their skills in the tournament. However, watching them getting butchered like pigs by this NPC aroused their curiosity. It was not an everyday occurrence for them to be able to watch pro players get bullied like that. More and more people got interested in this event as they got to watch the pros get shredded one after another. 2-1-0. He made it. I can't believe he used his trump card. Repeated barrel rolls. The crowd started laughing at the pro players' sorry state. They're all star players. Isn't this too extravagant of a lineup? Doesn't it feel like we're a few persons short? The more meticulous fans realized that Hao Tian and Frenzied Sword had not come for the mission. All the other pro players came. How could they let go of a chance like this? Whereas Hao Tian, Sleepy Winter felt helpless. I have already asked. Old Hao and Frenzied Sword were already qualified to begin with. The crowd could not process what Sleepy Winter had just said for a second. Hao Tian and Frenzied Sword had triggered Black Phantom's hidden storyline. Was that why they got this special treatment? The bunch of pro players suddenly felt a sense of unfairness in their hearts. They could not believe that they had to come here to get tortured over and over again, while those two just backdoored their way in. Where was the justice in that? The pro players were jealous to no end. They also wanted to receive such benefits. Han Zio silently sent out another pre-written mission to the surrounding players. The Last Bastion. Mission type, prize pool mission. Mission introduction. Someday in the future, a calamity will strike this world, and Sanctuary 3 will become the last remaining bastion for humanity. Protect this dwindling flame from the encroaching darkness. Only then will there be hope to overcome this calamity. Requirement, protect Sanctuary 3. The destruction rate must not go above 50%. Mission status, frozen. Start date, unknown. The grayed out name implied that this mission had not started. This was the first time that the players had seen a mission with the frozen status, and many were mystified. Word soon got out, and more people learned of this news. The heavens and the earth brightened while chasing the darkness away. Right at that moment, in the area right above the convoy, the players realized that there was a small black dot that was the size of an ant. They focused their eyes, and they could soon see that it was an outline of a spaceship that was descending toward the planet. Look, spaceship. At the beginning, the crowd became exhilarated as they talked with each other. But as the shadow of the spaceship became larger and larger and the sky started to dim, the excitement and noisiness of the crowd quickly died down. Tens of thousands of people's jaws dropped. The scene in front of their eyes was so shocking that they were lost for words. When the spaceship was still high up in the sky, the outline was only the size of a green bean. It was only when the spaceship was a few hundred meters above the crowd that they realized the sheer magnitude of the spaceship. The spaceship was large enough to block out the entire sky above. My God, just how big is this spaceship? As the players looked up into the sky, they could not see anything other than the black spaceship. They only saw the outline of the spaceship that was near the horizon. There was one poem that everyone remembered as the spaceship landed. Dark clouds bearing down on the city threatened to overwhelm it. Inside the Sanctuary 3, Gila stood behind his sister, and she put her hand on the shoulders of Aurora. The two of them both looked at the short-horned star. Will he ever come back? Aurora asked curiously. Gila remained quiet and shook her head. It's a wider world out there. After stepping out of here, there's no reason for him to come back. Hey sis, why didn't we also join him? Gila patted on Aurora's golden hair and did not reply. Hey, you're hurting me. Gila then realized that she had used too much force and quickly let go. The bear cub on the side roared at the sky, lay on the ground, and covered its head with its paws, sobbing as if it was sad about the departure of its owner. Aurora patted on the bear's fur and was also sad. She asked quietly, will we be able to see him? Sooner or later, we will. But you just said that he won't come back. Yeah. Gila did not explain. Aurora's heart skipped a beat as she understood the hidden meaning. Then her mood was happy again. He's gone. In Sanctuary 1, Bennett was doing a video call with Huang Yu and listening to the intel. From now on, Sanctuary 3 is under your command. Don't try to change Han Zio's arrangements, but other than that, you can decide on the other matters. Okay, thank you, Sir Bennett. Huang Yu was motivated since his hard work had finally paid off. Don't thank me. Han Zio recommended you before leaving. I understand. Wang Yu nodded and carved it in his heart. After ending the call, Bennett, with a smile on his face, logged into his secret account and opened the threats that the Six Nations had sent him. Bennett had dealt with the pressure from Raylan and other countries by himself, as he did not want Han Zhao to worry about these things before departing. Now that the ship had sailed, the way that his old friend had left was enough to shock the Six Nations, since Bennett himself also was surprised at the scene of departure. He wondered how Raylan would react to that. The Short-Horn Star did not state their purpose of entry, and this massive ship frightened the Six Nations. As the satellites detected the Short-Horn Star, the Six Nations had panicked and sent the Air Force to try and communicate with them. Yet, the Short-Horn Star had ignored them and showed no intention of talking to the highest power of the planet. Before the Six Nations could do anything, the spaceship had then left without a sound. After the visit of the enormous spaceship on planet Aquamarine, the Six Nations feared what had to come and quickly tried to get intel. When they found out about the truth that the Short-Horn Star had just come to pick up Han Zhao, the Six Nations had been flustered at first, but then they were suddenly struck dumb with amazement. The mysterious spaceship that had surpassed planet Aquamarine by countless of years was just there to pick Black Phantom up. This time, the Raylan was bamboozled. They had never thought that this would happen. The target whom they were threatening had already jumped out of the pool and stopped playing with them. No wonder Han Zhao had ignored all the threats from the Six Nations, since their hostility was just a speck of dust. Through the box-shaped cabin, the Earth became smaller and smaller as Short-Horn Star flew in the sky. The blue sky slowly turned dark while the anti-gravitation engine operated quietly. They headed into the dark universe. Suddenly, the cabin shook violently as it tried to escape the atmosphere. Before they knew it, they were in space. Planet Aquamarine was filled with the deep blue color of the ocean, with bountiful fertile land and specks of yellow dots. From above, one could see the entire land in detail, and Han Zhao saw that Andrea was covered in black, showing that the war and nuclear explosion had the most damaging effect at this area. He felt sad leaving his friends behind, so he still had some feelings for the planet Aquamarine. As he left the planet, part of his heart was still in his home. Even though he was not extremely close with people such as Bennett, Gila, and Aurora, they had great potential in their ability. Just from the perspective of benefits, Han Zhao hoped to see Gila and her sister grow stronger and provide assistance. Staring at the planet that was slowly drifting away, he quietly murmured, "I will be back." The galactic commercial spaceship did not force the passenger to stay in one place. It was more like a cruise that had a lot of entertainment and resting spaces. Different sections of the ship had different environments to accommodate different life forms. One side of the lobby was a large window that could directly see the beautiful universe decorated with the stars. All sorts of living creatures walked past them. They saw a bird talking to a lion that was wearing a suit. There was also a dwarf with a great big, bushy beard drinking beer with a beast with sharp teeth. Every one of them had different scents and voices, and they were mixing together in a small space, which gave the players a weird feeling, as it was their first contact with aliens. "What kind of species is that? Their heads look like a hammer," Second Prince said in surprise. "You look like them." Sun Eggplant laughed. "We are on the ship and have finished the transaction," Kurlod said. "When can I contact the headquarters?" "No worries. The final stop is Jubilee Hub. You can head back by yourself from there. I won't stop you." "That's good." Kurlod rubbed his hand and added awkwardly, "I want to get a drink, so I only have that much. Don't waste it all." Han Zhao gave him 10 enas. Han Zhao thought to himself that he was such a kind person for giving pocket money to a person whom he had scammed. After receiving the money, Kurlod skipped toward the bar. He believed in hedonism, so most of his money was spent on drinks. Kurlod was having a dark blue drink at the bar when a hybrid human with sharp ears and bony face walked up beside him, tossed an ena's coin, signifying that this cup was on him, and said with a smile, "You boarded from planet Aquamarine, right? That low-class planet is just a low-class civilization, and the people you brought onto the ship are all natives, aren't they? What does that have to do with you?" Kurlod looked at him sideways. "Hehe, are you interested in a deal? My name is Cecily. I do this." A bird wrapped in chains. That was a label for a slavery trade organization, one of the many scavenger businesses. Kurlod waved impatiently and said, "FCK off. I don't want to waste my time with you." Public spaceships were rather chaotic, with quite many hidden gray organizations looking for suckers. "Don't be so quick to reject. I can see all of the natives that you've brought along are supers, so their prices will be quite good. Consider it okay. At this time, Hanzao's cold voice appeared from behind the two. I think it's time for you to leave. Cecily turned his head around and saw Hanzao standing behind expressionless. He smiled without caring, ignored Hanzao, and gave Kurlot a slight bow before leaving. Cecily blended into the crowd and started chatting with others again. It seemed like he did not care much about the failed deal this time. There are hundreds and thousands of scavenger organizations in the Shattered Star Ring, recognizable by their tattoos. Some scavengers also do other shady business, like robbery, kidnapping, and extortion. That Cecily is the middleman for the slave trade, in charge of looking for targets. He belongs to the Boneless Bird Scavenger Group, a tough criminal group wanted by many galactic civilizations in Godara. You guys have been targeted, so it's best to be careful, but scavengers won't do things that will cost them a loss. You should be safe in the spaceship since I rejected him, and he won't continue to try, Kurlot said. I feel that his target isn't us natives. Hanzao thought about. At this moment, the ground started to tremble unusually. A piercing alarm sounded from the broadcast instantly after. Hanzao's expression changed a little, and he instantly stood up. The hall was chaotic at this moment. All of the passengers walked out and looked outside the window, terrified. Colorful explosions flashed outside, but there was no sound due to the lack of air. The scavenger spaceships fired at the Short-Horn Star. The Short-Horn Star had already activated its high-energy shield. The scavenger spaceships were much smaller than Short-Horn Star, but they were also much more agile because of that. They dodged the attacks and dashed around, but Short-Horn Star could not dodge anything due to its large size. It could only endure the attacks with its shield. This is the captain of Short-Horn Star speaking. Passengers, we have encountered an attack from scavengers. We will start to turn our engine to its full capacity. As long as we enter the jump gate, we will be able to get rid of the enemies. Please do not worry. The enemy will definitely not be able to break the defense. We are very experienced in facing attacks. I can't believe they are attacking so publicly. If this spaceship can't withstand it, we're all done for. I haven't lived long enough. You don't say. No one's lived long enough. Suddenly, the spaceship trembled tens of times harder than it did before with deafening sounds of explosions. The group staggered and almost fell. Hanzao's expression turned very serious. The universe was a vacuum, so the sound of the explosion meant that the enemies had destroyed the shield and broken it. This captain had jinxed it. The moment that he heard the sound, a notification showed on his interface. You have triggered an emergency mission. Mission introduction. Due to certain reasons, some groups of scavengers have their eyes on Short-Horn Star. They are preparing to board and attack all the passengers. Your fate is intertwined tightly with this spaceship. Mission requirements. Repel all the scavengers and protect Short-Horn Star. Reward, 350,000 experience, 1,500 ENAs, unlock area prestige. Looks like the scavengers chose the second method. There are two other scavenger groups other than Boneless Bird. The reason for them to work together and attack us is definitely more than just to capture a group of slaves. Hanzao turned around and saw the 20 or so players behind him standing in a daze, which meant that they were looking at their interface and had triggered the same mission. First, we'll retrieve our weapons from the warehouse. Then, we'll split up into 3 groups. One group will head toward the main control room, and another group will look for the captain and the cotters. They have authority to operate the spaceship, so the enemies will definitely head toward these 2 targets as well. There's a very high possibility that we will get into combat. The last group will find the emergency escape ship. Such a large spaceship definitely has this kind of measure, so this will be the last resort. Players splitting up was very advantageous. They communicated with their interface, which would not be blocked, and Hanzao could control the situation by talking to the players. Hundreds of scavengers equipped with various firearms battled the guards of Short-Horn Star, shooting out beams and bullets, and people were screaming in agony as they fell. Most of the soldiers were normal people of various races, and there were also a few supers. Kill the guards quickly. Gazers, go to clean up the main control room. Beast Hoofs, get some hostages. Serpent Braid had invited 2 other scavenger groups for this job called Gazers and Beast Hoofs. And the rest, Serpent Braid swung his braid and smiled hideously. Follow me to find that Godarin. Has the distress signal been sent out yet? In the main control room, the captain was covered in sweat while the operator at the side was panicking. Our communications have been jammed. All signals are blocked. Impossible. The communication device on Short-Horn Star is a high-grade device brought from a galactic civilization. How do these scavengers have such high-grade equipment? The captain was shocked and furious. Galactic long-range communicators had universality and diversity, causing signal blocking devices to be very expensive. Furthermore, the enemy had an anti-jump device that could disrupt the space and prevent jumping. The captain was devastated. Quickly, get the passenger list, see if there's someone strong. Someone frantically filtered the passenger list, and a few people's identities were displayed. All of them was slightly renowned combat personnel, and among them, the most famous one was the high-level mercenary, the Green Knight. The Green Knight, it's him. Great. The captain was overjoyed. He hastily announced through the broadcast, "Passengers, the situation right now is very urgent. The scavengers are heading toward the main control room. I hope the passengers with combat abilities can help us. This is saving yourselves, too, and I will pay a large monetary reward." The current situation was almost desperate. The warhammer swung sideways and blew away a large group of the spaceship guards. Serpent Braid swung the warhammer with one hand, covered in gray pugilist flames. The bullets and low-level energy beams could only leave white marks on his stone skin. This was his race talent, making him very tough. He was laughing insolently, charging forward with ease, and forced the guards away. The battle in the ship was heated. The shield outside was covered in explosions too. It was like a song of war. Request for backup. We met a strong super on the way to the main control room and were stopped. Please help. Serpent Braid took some people and headed toward the main control room. The spaceship was rather large, so it took some time for them to finally arrive at the scene. Corpses of the scavengers were scattered all over the floor. Serpent Braid saw a flash and a green burst of light like a fountain at the end of the path. About a dozen scavengers were thrown against the wall. Their bodies were twisted and their bones were broken. The Green Knight stood at the path to the main control room with a cold face. Green streams of light covered his body like ripples. He was actually an Esper, able to control a special green energy that could be melded into various shapes, which could be used to attack and defend. Suddenly, the light shield burst, and the warhammer hit the left side of Lurden's body without any hindrance. Boom! Half of Lurden's body exploded. Parts splashed out like a blossoming flower, shooting onto the walls, and the oil splattered all over the ground. Lurden flew out and hit the wall, but there was no pain on his face. His body was half implants, so the shattered mechanical body did not have a sense of pain. This technology was more mature and complete than what the Germinal organization had. Of course, it would not damage one's life. Suddenly, flames shot out from under his feet. He flew up, jumped over Serpent Braid, and fled. The reward was why he helped. His life was more important to him. Half of his body had shattered, and the situation was very critical, so he immediately fled without any hesitation. It was so rational it was almost too cold. This spaceship will definitely be lost. No matter what the scavengers want to do, I'm not their target. The security perimeter shouldn't be far from here. I just have to take the emergency aircraft to escape. The scavengers will not chase me. Seeing that Lurden had fled, the captain lost all strength and plonked himself in a chair, his eyes shut in agony. It's over. It's all over. The Green Knight had run away, and the enemy was inches away from the main control room. What more hope was there? Serpent Braid suppressed his desire to chase. He remembered the main mission and brought the rest toward the main control room door. Panic and terror spread. The people were horrified. Every step that the scavengers took, the captain's heart sunk deeper. This situation was already hopeless. The captain could not think of anything that would reverse the situation. He could not help but think of his wife, his kid, and his mistress back home, and his heart filled with sorrow. Just as Serpent Braid was about to hammer open the door, he suddenly heard an explosion, and a surge of heat rapidly approached from behind him. He hastily turned around, and a thick beam of scorching light rapidly expanded in his vision. Serpent Braid hurriedly raised his warhammer before him, and the flames condensed into an invisible force field protection layer. The beam hit right on target. Bang! The warhammer turned into burning hot iron instantly. With a loud scream from Serpent Braid, the warhammer fell out of his hand, and he was blown away. The ember on his arms and chest was still burning. What? The captain's expression suddenly changed. Another one. Kill him. Other scavengers turned around and focus fired him. Bullets and beams were everywhere. Serpent Braid spun the warhammer, not to attack Hanzio but the main control room door. With a loud bang, the door fell, and the main control room was exposed. Just as Serpent Braid was about to enter the main control room, at this time, a dark red stream of light appeared between Hanzio's eyebrows. A sexy outline of a lady appeared behind him. Without any hesitation, Hanzio used all 3 psychic impacts on Serpent Braid. Having just seen from the combat information that Serpent Braid was a LV70 pugilist, Han Zio knew that since the stone giant blood gave him very strong physical resistance, correspondingly, his mind was his weakness. Serpent Braid stopped in place. The next second, thick blood shot out from his nose and mouth, and he felt like his brain had exploded. The world was spinning, and he lost control of his body, fell before the main control room door, and could not get up. The captain felt like he was towing the line of life and death. He gulped nervously and said, "Are you a passenger, too?" The captain could not express what he actually meant because he was so nervous. What he actually meant was, this mysterious mechanical suit warrior seemed to have even stronger combat power than the slightly renowned Green Knight. But why was he not on the passenger list earlier? Han Zio turned around and said, "I heard you'll pay a reward." After the disappointment from Green Knight earlier, the captain did not dare hesitate at all. He had to grab onto this life-saving rope at all costs, so he hastily exclaimed, "That's right. I can give you a lot of money. You must stop them." A notification appeared on the interface. "You have triggered the mission." Mission introduction. The Shorthorn Star's captain has decided to hire you to protect the spaceship and his safety. Mission requirements. Successfully protect Shorthorn Star and keep the captain alive. Reward, 8,000 Enas. 8,000? That's quite a lot. Enas had a very high purchasing power. Not mentioning Han Zio's knowledge, Kurlod's salary as an investigator was only 4,000 Enas annually, excluding the benefits that he received. And this guy splurged on entertainment and night activities, yet he could still save 800 plus Enas. Han Zio was very satisfied. Within the same matter, he could take initiative and reap more money from different people. Back when he was running his power leveling business, he had already become very familiar with this method. Many players had this habit as well. When they knew that they were going to a certain place, they would accept all the missions regarding that place in advance and complete them at once, getting a greater profit. This new mission had only been given to him, and the other players did not have it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.